obviously know Gypsy personally. I know Christy personally. I know Rob. So if a creator tells you that they have information that nobody knows and everyone lied, they're lying. They're doing this to create intrigue and interest and trying to get you to like jump on the bandwagon to send hate to Gypsy. You don't have to like her, okay? You can dislike her. You can think anything.
Just for shits and giggles, I took Katie Joy Paulson's face. Yes, her face. I took her face and I split it in half and I mirror imaged each half to each other and used the golden ratio, right? This is for what you would look like if you had a perfect asymmetrical face. So I did that, and this is what it looks like. And trust me, I used the ratio. I made sure it was completely on grid. It was exact. This is it. This is one half of her face and the other half. And this is what they would look like, both sides, if she had asymmetrical face. For some reason, both versions look way worse than in real life. But I just thought it was funny because the two faces of Katie Joy Paulson, who runs Without a Crystal Ball, which is not even a real company. She just, I'm going to make this YouTube channel handle Without a Crystal Ball and then go pay to have it listed as a LLC, a limited liability. It's a YouTube channel. It's not an actual business or company. It's the same thing that Fancy Maselli, aka April Johns is her real name, actually did. And in my opinion, they are two threads cut from the same cloth, because she does the same exact thing. And here you can see her say exactly that. But what's funny is she says, I personally know Gypsy. I personally know Christy. I personally know Mia. I personally know Rob. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's so funny, because if you personally know somebody, then you would know his name is Rod Blanchard. Not Rob for Robert or Ron for Ronald. It's Rod for Rodney. That is what his name is. And it's so funny that I'm a complete stranger to the Blanchards and to Gypsy Blanchard. And you know what? I know his name. How can you be a journalist and a reporter and fucking botch somebody's name so horribly? If you know them personally, no, you don't. Because if you know somebody personally, you know their name. You know them on a first name personal basis. I've never known somebody personally who I totally botched their name. I think that's the first in introductions and first impressions and all of that is that you know somebody's name. So I think that that's really funny. But then she goes on to tell people, she self-projects. She self-projects, telling people about people like Fancy who spread his misinformation, just because you look cleaner as you're doing it until you're drunk late at night on live because you can't handle being a wife and a mom, you know. Doesn't mean that you're not any different. In fact, everything she says is completely and exactly what Fancy Maselli is being sued for. And this is exactly why she is being sued. I can't even count the lawsuits. I know she was being sued or has been sued by Todd Chrisley. I know that 2 years ago on April 5th, which just happens to be my mother's birthday, 2022, Robert Shinn. Okay, so if he sued her on April 5th of 2022, that means that she was doing that for a lot longer. It has a lot of evidence. Go read the suit. It's on my YouTube, straight out of context. Not straight out of context with Barbara Ann. You'll see the entire thing. Read it. It's all documented, exactly what she did. But the fact that she goes on to tell everybody that they're spreading misinformation to get false engagement. They're spreading misinformation. That's exactly what you do. Could you be self-projecting any harder than what you are? Literally. That's exactly what you do when you tell people that you're in the middle of bumfuck nowhere in Minnesota and that you somehow have these sources in Louisiana and you have sources in Arkansas with the Duggars and that you have sources in LA for Miranda Derrick and you have sources here in Detroit to Miranda Derrick's parents and that you have sources in New York and then you have sources here. Bullshit. You do not have sources. You are making it up. If you do not actually have a source and you do not actually talk to people, and other than Google is not a source. of information. That is a publishing, actually. When you take somebody else's publishing and republish it in your own words and plagiarize it, that's not only plagiarism, that's copyright, that's infringement, that's republishing somebody else's publishing. Yeah. You could be sued for defamation for not just plagiarism, but for defamation for republishing somebody else's publishing. That is against all journalistic oath and standard and moral. And she's sitting here saying Fancy's doing that stuff. Never mind Fancy. You're doing it right now with that live. You're doing it with all your videos. You're doing it with all your social media. In fact, while you're doing social media constantly 24/7 for years, what are you doing? You're not with your son. You're not with your husband. You're not cleaning your garage, obviously. What are you doing? That's right. Creating sensationalist, intriguing, completely false misinformation, because misinformation sells better, gets more likes, more views, more watch time, more comments, even if it's in the form of negativity and not positivity. You're going to get more engagement. More engagement means more monetization, means that you have to keep doing it to keep making big checks. And you know what? You're a fucking sellout. You're a sellout if you're that bad of a human being that you do that. That you're not actually doing anything good, or you're not actually reporting anything fundamentally the truth, and making up sources that do not exist, or even reaching out to people themselves to try to say that they're the source, lying about a real source. No, journalists are supposed to protect their sources, supposed to honor their sources, and is supposed to do a credibility check to make sure that their sources are not lying to them before they publish. I mean, the whole entire thing with the Catholic Church and the 90 different Catholic priests in that entire, if you've ever watched the movie or the documentaries about that, the 90 different, it took them years to cross-reference and actually go back and find every person to check before they were allowed to even publish the fact that the Catholic Church in Boston and New York and in that area, that Boston alone, I think the one was all about Boston, and just 90 priests in over several decades had, that they knew, that the Catholic Church knew, and was actually taking these priests and just moving them around to different parishes, and that they knew that they were harming kids. And so when they did that, the journalists, not only did they have to directly talk to the victims and the sources that they had to do their due diligence, and they had a duty of care. They had to, before they could publish any kind of story, even if somebody else beat them to it, they still couldn't come out with their story until they went and fundamentally made sure their sources, every source, was credible, checked out, was telling the truth. And if you are a true journalist, trust me, you are not flying all over the United States and paying for that, being able to in-person interview people in these sources and to actually check to make sure that they are telling the truth. She's making up the fact that she has sources. She doesn't have sources. She's out in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota, in her house, in her basement, on her phone or her camera or whatever fucking PC she has, and she's making these dumbass videos and creating sensationalist thumbnails, sensationalist headlines, and tags and keywords, and SEOing her videos so she can stay monetized. It is for no other motive. The biggest motive is this is how people make money today. They're doing it by OnlyFans, they're doing it by Patreon, they're doing it by Spotify, they're doing it by podcasting. This is how people are making money. And Katie Joy is no different. And not only that, but money is the biggest motive in the world. Money literally curses people and turns people into horrible human beings. You're not going to find a genuinely good character human unless you're here in HUD housing and finding people that have done nothing but been poor and stayed poor and struggled their entire life for everything that they are and everything that they have. You're not going to fundamentally find good people. She's not a good person. April Johns is not a good person. To me, they are no different. But for you to sit here and lie and say that you know them, if you DM'd Gypsy and she messaged you back a few times, or you gave her your cell phone number and you guys texted a few times, you don't personally know them. That's not enough communication or even meeting in person to say that you know them in person. And not only that, you would not botch and call her dad Rob for Robert when his name is Rod for Rodney. Who lies like that? That's verifiable.